Hi, my name is Bob, and the reason I call myself the Model Hack is because this is the first time I've done a lot of the things you are seeing on this channel. If you know a better way to do it, that's probably the correct way to do it because I'm learning as I go, and I hope you enjoy the journey as I go through it. So in today's video, we're going to start the detailing process, and the plan is to put an outdoor eating area in front of the restaurant as is the prototype. Now the first square is going to be a regular sidewalk, and the second square is going to be protected by a bunch of bollards running around the perimeter. In the prior scene, I measured off the approximate distance to figure out how many of these square bollards I would need, and then I'm cutting them to size using a razor saw. This is probably guessing 1/8 square to this. You could use round plastic, which would certainly work, and this is just what I had convenient and enough to do the job. And I decided that square was going to be a little bit easier because I'm going to run wire through these around the perimeter to separate the public space from the walkway, which is required in California. So after taking the razor saw and cutting a bunch of pieces to approximately the same size, I overcut the number I needed, which were about 6 or 8, and then I lined them up side by side, taped them together, and filed them off to the same size, more precisely. Obviously, better modelers would just cut the things to the exact size, but I'm not that good, so this is the way I did it. So with the pieces cut to the same size, I wanted to fill the top with, I used Mod Podge. Probably if I did this again, I would use either green filler or another filler I found on the internet and then sand them flush. But these bollards are typically either filled with concrete or are welded across the top. There's no science to this thing, so the fact that the glue dried and made little indentations just added character. It's not a big deal. So I spray painted them a metal color, and then I drilled using a pin drill, 2 holes a third of the way down, all the way through all but 2 of them, and then on the 2 which represent the corners, I went halfway through one side and then halfway through an adjacent side, and then we're going to plan on putting a wire through this. So I'm going to use filament to represent the wire chain that goes around the ropes off the cordons off the area. And this is a Wildfire brand that I bought at Michael's store. It's 0.006 or 0.15 millimeter spool, and this represents thin wire. So in order to anchor the piece in place, I tied a knot on the end of the line that's big enough to be stopped by the hole that we drilled with the pin vise, and then we'll feed it through each piece of plastic. And we'll do this twice, once for the top piece and once for the bottom piece. Now, I learned a lesson here, and then I'll teach it to you directly. There's a trick to this, and I edited out a lot of my fiddling with this, trying to get these through the hole. And the trick is, and you'll see this here in a minute, is to take the pin vise and make sure that the pin vise goes back and forth through the hole cleanly without any friction. And if it does that, then the little thin wire will pass easily through the piece of plastic, no problem. It took me about an hour to figure that out, and the whole job went very smoothly from there. So the way I did this was to feed all the one side all the way through all the holes on all the pieces. Then I went back and did the same thing on a second side. You can see by that little string that flashed right there. So the interior floor of this building is wood floor, and it's old style wood. And this is how I get the grain of wood into plastic. It's what I take the razor saw and I run it horizontally across the piece of plastic in order to give it a wood grain texture, and then I just paint it shades of brown. You know, here, because it's indirect scenery, I didn't do a lot of time and invest a lot of energy to make it high quality looking wood, because it's going to be seen underneath other details that I'm going to find. But I did a quick and dirty job here in order to give a sense of a wood floor, and painted it a couple colors. You do have to sand this also, forgot to mention, you do have to sand this down a little bit, because the gradations that this thing make are not HO scale. But you take 200 P80 wet dry sandpaper, wet it a little bit, run it across the rough edges and file it down so that it's smooth, and then it looks correct for HO scale. You can do this with wood floors, boxcars, or anything wood exterior buildings. It looks really nice, especially when you're doing older, worn out wood like on the side of barns and stuff. So the next task is to glue the pieces in, and what I started with is I took the end piece and I run some silicone glue over the ends of it to anchor the cabling to the back, and that obviously face goes against the building. And then I did the very first bollard and let it dry solid before I put any of the other pieces in, because I knew I was going to have to tug on these cables to get them taut, and so that those first couple pieces needed to be anchored. So then you see that I put the second piece in the corner, and I let that dry for the same reason, because when I pull these taut, there's going to be tension on those two pieces. You'll see that later. And then I ran the next 2 or 3 bollards down, let them glue solid, put the corner in, let that glue solid, and then we'll come back to the video on the last piece. The building itself is just laid in place so that I can get the positioning correct. It's not glued down yet, and you'll see that also later. You also get a chance to see the floor painted in a little bit. So here we have the bowlers in place drying, and you can see the wood floor. I did a 3-color wash with light brown, dark brown, and black. And like I say, this was quick and dirty. I didn't do a real scientific job of this. You'll see why in the next video. And I glued the doors down, gluing them open because the restaurant is going to be open for this scene, and glued them in place so that I could get the other detailed parts lined up properly. So now it's time to pull the lines taut, and you can see that I'm using silicone glue, that there is some flex in these pieces. If I had to do this again, I'd probably glue them down with CA, but you know, the silicone worked fine. And so with the lines pulled taut, I put in a little weight on top of the lines where I wanted them, and then I took some latex adhesive caulk and I glued the wire in place from the back on the building side, and that will secure the line exactly where it needs to be into perpetuity. In the next video, we're going to do the interior parts, and you'll see those details laying there in the scene right here. But I had to show this little clip of video because here's where I cut the lines, and you'll see that with using latex caulk and the process we just used, that everything stays in place perfectly. And we're on to the next project, which is going to be the roof. Now the roof here, I decided to use sandpaper because based on what it looked like on Google Maps, this looked like a flat roof and didn't have any venting details on it. So I just said, hey, you know, this is really going to be real easy. I'll just use sandpaper and we'll go from there. But I did the editing on this in early January, and I drove by prototype and I realized that the roof is different than what I did here. And so in a later video, I'm going to come back, I'm going to redo the roof and put the appliances in as per the prototype. And but for now, we're going to end up with a flat roof and with no scenic details on the roof. So this roof was cut using the process that I call cut long, file back, but this time we're doing it with scissors and knives. I took the machine edge and the sandpaper and lined it up with two sides of the building, marked off where I wanted to make the rough cuts. And you can see that as I lay everything in place that the sandpaper is just a little bit oversized. And in this upcoming high-speed piece of editing, I will show you the whole process that I used to cut back the roof onto the size. This is about 15 minutes of video shortened to a minute, and you can see how I did very fine cuts in order to get the sandpaper to fit the roof perfectly. So cutting sandpaper like this leaves you little fine fibers once the piece is cut to the correct size. And the final step before gluing is to cut those little fibers off the page and then glue the piece in place, and we have a textured roof. Sometimes I go back and apply some powders to this to get the newness off the plastic, but since this is a renovated building, I left it completely dark for the time being. So that concludes our video today. Next time we're going to put the final details on the building, and thank you for watching to the end. If you like the video, give me a like, thumbs up, leave a comment, share it with a friend. Everything helps, and we'll look forward to seeing you on the next video.